So the real estate landscape, as you guys know it, has going to change dramatically starting in August. And what we wanted to do is send a message out to our friends and family to just tell you what's going on so you hear it from us to make sure that you have the most relevant information possible so that you know how to help yourself and also people that you love make good decisions as we transition into this new real estate landscape. So here's actually what's going on. So not that long ago, there was a National Association of Realtors, which is the association that almost every realtor belongs to, settled on a lawsuit that changed the way real estate agents interact with the public. And that's going into effect this August. And it basically boils down to two or three major changes. So the first change is that we are no longer commissions have always been negotiable, but they are no longer to advertise something called cooperative compensation in what we call the multiple listing service. So in simpler terms, the seller signs a listing agreement and it talks about what they would offer as compensation to a buyer's agent, and that information would be placed into our MLS and visible to all realtors. That is no longer going to be accessible, and now sellers have always had this freedom, but it's going to be much more heightened whether or not they will or will not offer a buyer agent commission. So that is change number one. Now, we don't expect that to change a whole lot because it's been a customary practice, but we might see some of that in the early stages as this all kind of settles into the new landscape. The second most important thing that's going to occur is that in order to see a home, or just to do anything in real estate, you're going to have something called a signed buyer brokerage agreement. Essentially, you are going to have to hire a real estate agent before you go into any real estate related activities, which is a far departure from what has been historically the norm in Hernando, which James will talk about in a second. So what does that mean? When you sign a buyer brokerage agreement, think about hiring somebody. You're basically going into an agreement with someone that says that they are going to represent you in a real estate related capacity. That also includes compensation. So that has not been the norm. And so what we're going to do is kind of go navigate what historically has been done in Hernando County and what you can expect going forward. So it's pretty clear on how to navigate this new landscape as you progress through buying, selling, investing in homes going into the future. So, James, what has been the history here?
So I think this is going to be a bit of a shock for some people as we go into it. But in Hernando County, buyer brokerage agreements have been almost non-existent. I'm one of the few agents that have used this for the duration of time since I came into the industry in 2019. And I used it very distinctly for one reason. So if you have purchased a home and it wasn't with me, you may or may not have signed a buyer brokerage agreement. I'm going to say you probably haven't. So if you haven't signed a buyer brokerage agreement and you bought a home in Florida, by default, the state of Florida has determined that you should know that that agent was working for you as a transaction broker, which is one of the different agency relationships that we can have. In order for an agent to work for you as a single agent, you do have to have a written agreement with them that says that they are working for you as a single agent. So if you bought a home and you didn't have an agreement before you wrote the contract for the home, they were working for you as a transaction broker by default. And that was a huge sticking point to me because a transaction broker is not working to the detriment of either side. They're working to bring a transaction together. And it very clearly states that in there that they are not working to the detriment of either side, and they cannot disclose if the seller will take a price less than the listing or asking price unless they receive that in writing from the seller. Now, as a single agent, you get things like full confidentiality, you get full disclosure, you get obedience, you get loyalty. And clearly, when you hear those words and the way I say them, that's how I like to work for my folks, right? So I've always used this agreement because it allows me to work using my skill set in order to help them, which involves things like confidentiality and full disclosure. So coming into this new landscape, I think that it's going to better people. I think that it's going to help you in the long run. One of the key things that we want to talk about here, and I want to help you avoid because you're my friends and family. One of the ways that a lot of people come into buying a home is they see a beautiful home on Realtor.com or Zillow, one of these major sites, and they click the button thinking that they're going to have a quick conversation with the listing agent. And I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. When you do that, those sites sell your information to multiple different agents and you're not going to talk to the listing agent. So now you're playing a game of roulette of whether or not the agent that you actually speak to is a qualified professional that actually knows what they're doing inside of this world. You don't know. They might be, right? You could get to an agent who's going to be very well educated to help
Mhm.
you, but you might not. And I want you to avoid this because if you're watching this video, somehow, some way, you're in our worlds. And we spend every single day trying to figure out how to better our craft. And I want to talk about how do we shift to where instead of you being in that spot, we can avoid that spot and make sure that we're here to help you when the time comes and you've got somebody that you I would think trust if you're watching these videos here to serve you and prepare you for the process. So, I mean, where do you get to out of that?
So I think that the idea of luck is what you're trying to take out of this equation is that if you are looking to do something, which in our lifetime, most of us are, right? I've bought and sold personal homes
Yep.
twice already, that you work with somebody who is referred. So either you know them directly, which you can speak to them, to what they've done, or that you have a friend who mentions a need and you're able to then refer them to somebody that you know because they don't know someone. I think the biggest change is that, you know, whether or not you're working as a single agent or transaction, I think historically what has occurred is many transaction brokers operated as single
Yep.
agents without just paperwork
Yep.
because they was not very closely regulated that way.
Yep.
And so there was no
A lot of agents don't even know.
real discernible difference in how people operated, whether one or the other,
Yep.
right, wrong, or indifferent. But that's probably fair to say that
100%.
that's what occurred. And so, but now with that, you're committing to someone in writing. And I think that is the biggest change. And so, if you think about signing an agreement with someone you don't really know very well, I think that will give some people some pause. Whereas I do think that some people are more willing to sign an agreement to work with someone that they know. Now, of course, you can fire an agent. You can be, these are like any other things, like you can move on from it. However, there's a much more skin in the game when it comes to having a buyer brokerage agreement when someone is committing to working with you. And how much better would it be if you actually had more confidence that the person that you're signing with, you know their character, you know their track record, you know the team's track record, you know that it's going to be a fruitful relationship on one of the largest purchases that you're going to have in your life, or sales, or any of those things. So if we can help our friends and family think about that in that way, even if you don't, because it's very possible you know more than one realtor. It may be possible that you wouldn't even use us, and I've seen that too. Like
Yeah.
multiple good people in this industry.
Yep.
That's fine too, but I would never recommend that we let someone we know go to a complete stranger with the hopes that they get lucky to find a good agent.
And I think that brings up, so like in our team, we've been talking a lot about these changes, what's going to happen. And one of the biggest emphasis that we have is just continuing to strengthen our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's like the most important thing I've learned out of all of this is the way that we interact with folks has to be amplified and the way that they interact with us. And that brings me to just a couple of things that I kind of want to debunk here and make sure that you guys know, especially if you're watching this and if you get this deep into this video, especially if you see this, right? Um, you don't have to wait until you're ready to talk to us in any capacity. Mm-hmm. That is one of the most common things that I hear is that, oh, somebody comes to me and they're like, James, my lease is up next month and I really want to buy a house. Like, what do I got to do? I'm like, man, like, how long have you been thinking about this?
Right.
And the truth is, if you're watching this, like, you've been thinking about it for years. You're renting. You want to buy a house. It's the American way. I'm sure that most people that are renting would feel that way. I want to kill that because if you're thinking about buying a home, you're not wasting my time. I don't care if it happens in 5 years. There's nobody inside of this team that cares when it happens. Let's have a conversation and develop a strategic plan on how do we get there. Do we need a savings plan? Do we need to work on our credit? Do we need to work on our debts? Like, what do we need to do to get ourselves in position to do it? And the same is true for investing. I think there's so many people that are watching this that own a home and they do want to invest in real estate. And every time they think about it and they remember they want to do that, they kind of shut it back down and they move on because the steps may not be clear. And I think that we need to have those conversations. If adding homes to your portfolio or starting to fix and flip is something you desire to do, let's have a conversation and start developing a plan, start figuring out which homes, which areas make sense, start to talk about things like cash flow and ROI so that we can have a better understanding of what you're looking at. And the same thing is true for people that are thinking about selling or trying to make those type of decisions, or thinking about whether they're going to sell or refi. Maybe there's some things in life that
Mhm.
we've got to take care of. Again, let's have that conversation. We've recently started on a huge announcement that's going to come up, and we're here to help you on your lending needs as well.
Right. And so, as we close out this video, the messaging is really simple. Like the real estate state landscape is changing whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter what brokerage you're in. It doesn't matter who you know that does real estate. These rules apply to everyone. And we know, having dealt in this industry on a day-to-day basis as a full-time gig, the importance of knowing the person that you're going to be working with, trusting that they know what they're talking about and have your best interest, and enjoying the process, because it is already a stressful process. And so, the more resources and tools available to you to make that as simple as possible, the better it will be. If you're watching this and you don't really know who we are, you can always Google the Adams Group Experience, and you can see, as of today, 114 five-star reviews and very, very detailed comments from our clients about the experience that they receive. And so, you need this. That's going to be more important than ever when you're looking at this, because at the end of the day, you're going to be signing something to commit to someone to work with them. And I think that's what's really going to be different and going to take a little bit to get adjusted to.
Yeah.
And so we're here. We'll provide updates as it goes, and updates to the industry, updates to the market. But until then, we will see you guys in our next video. Hope you enjoyed this, and let us know in the comments if you have any questions. Have a good one.